This is the Forge of Leadership, which this section we're going to actually look at some biblical leadership examples, and we're going to talk about how trials actually have a formation impact on your leadership and on the person that you are. So that being said, let's have a brief conversation. What is the purpose of a trial?
You're talking about a biblical trial?
Yeah, not a, Your Honor, not a legal trial. What's the purpose of this, Your Honor? Just dismiss the case.
To teach you, it's kind of like a test, to teach you what you don't know, to see, so that you'll know how to improve.
Okay, a trial is there so that you know how to improve, to teach you something. That sounds, anybody have anything else to add to that?
To strengthen you.
To strengthen you.
Smooth off the rough edges.
Yep, smooth off the rough edges. To mature you.
See if
So
you're
you'll
ready.
grow.
See if you're ready. It's a preparation too. Very good. David, you get some scripture for us back there?
I do.
Easy there, Tiger. Are you in James?
Yeah.
All right. Hold off on that real quick. That's cheating. No, that's spot on where we're headed. So what kind of trials have come your way?
Financial?
Okay, financial, yeah.
Moral.
Moral trials. Yep.
Physical strength.
Physical. Sickness or just energy.
Yeah, I guess trials of endurance. Making it through.
Busyness. Having the strength to do all the tasks.
Yeah, like going back to school to get your undergrad while you're working and you have a family and all that.
Oh, yeah.
2 hours, 3 hours of sleep a night.
Yep.
Those are big trials.
That's what David did, by the way. That's why he can whoop with a genuine whoop of only a true Aggie.
Too tired to whoop?
And what did you do in those trials?
Complain.
Complain. Yes, please be honest. Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay, praying. That's a good thing.
Like desperation.
You're a lot of
Sometimes I ask other people to help me or support me.
Seek out godly counsel or ungodly counsel.
Well, no, godly.
Godly counsel. Yeah. Okay. And how often do these trials come your way?
2.
2? That's a good answer.
That's an interesting.
2.
TWO or TOO?
Oh, I was thinking too often. That is good.
Really, I mean,
Yeah, pretty often, isn't it?
magnitude differs, but
Yeah, that's a good point. The magnitude differs. But do you know that you've got a trial on the way right now? I don't know what it is. I'm just saying, generally speaking, and with respect to too often, you've got a trial that's on the way. It hasn't even come up yet, but you're going to find out.
Great thought.
Yeah, you feel better now? What types of trials are headed your way? Oh, let's not beat a dead horse. The same type, right? The same type that we were talking about: financial, moral,
yeah.
strength, physical, emotional, spiritual, relational. Trials come too often, and what you do in the face of those trials, these trials really do shape you and prepare you for something. And let's think in terms of, with respect to your plan and God's plan and doing what's best for you which is why these trials come, to mature you and to prepare you for what's next. So here's a question. How do you prepare a leader? Just a hypothetical question here. How do you prepare a leader to save a people that will all be dead in 20 years from a terrible famine? How do you do it? What would you do?
Talk to Joseph.
Haha, that's funny. Seriously though, what would you do?
Well, I mean,
You'd get godly counsel. Okay.
That's what he meant to say.
Yeah. What else? What would you really do? Like 20 years from now, there's going to be a terrible famine, and people are going to be dead.
Now, we know that ahead of time they're going to die. There's no hope.
Yep.
There's no hope. Just make the best of those years and try to get people to accept Christ.
Okay. Just resign yourself to the fact that they're going to be dead,
Yeah.
and in the meantime, try and save. Okay.
Well, if you already know they're going to be dead, then why waste your time fighting it? Concentrate on.
Well, you know that there's a famine
Right.
in 20 years, a terrible one. What can you do to mitigate that problem?
Extreme prepping.
Okay, take a prepper attitude. Hoarding food.
Oh, so there is hope.
Yeah, this is problem solving here. Yeah.
I think I read the question wrong.
Sorry.
Is that right?
We're all here.
I thought about him before I saw the answer.
Yes. Well, for those of you who have looked ahead, this problem has been thought about and a solution has come up, and it's really simple. I think you'll appreciate this, Shelley. This is what you do in order to prepare for that. You sell that future leader as a slave, make sure he goes to prison for a crime he didn't commit, you leave him there to rot for a good 10 years, and then he'll be ready to interpret Pharaoh's dream and become the vizier of Egypt. Joseph. Because this is a trial here, or a problem that's coming down the road, and a leader needed to be prepared to handle this trial. This was God's plan. Now, we didn't get to have too much fun coming over a real solution for this. Nobody put out too many answers, although prepping was one of them, being a prepper, hoarding food. But this was God's plan right here. These are the steps. God's objective is for Joseph to become the vizier of Egypt, and then his goal is to keep these people safe. Okay? These are the objectives. This is, okay, what do I need to do to get Joseph ready? And these are the things that had to be done. So let's just look at briefly look at the life of Joseph with respect to how his leadership was shaped in the forge of one trial after the other. Because indeed, these are trials. Put yourself in his shoes. Sold as a slave, thrown in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Sounds like the start of some 1980s action nightly TV show or whatever. All right, the life of Joseph. As you know, Jacob married 4 wives. His favorite wife was Rachel. And Joseph was born. He was the 11th one born, the 11th boy, but the firstborn of Rachel, his favorite wife, which is a place of high honor. He's not the firstborn, though, so he shouldn't get the honors of a firstborn, but he is definitely doted on. Joseph has these dreams, and these dreams are annoying because he's the youngest boy. He's going up to his brother saying, "Hey, I had a dream that y'all were worshiping at my feet or bowing at my feet saying how awesome I am." What do you think that dream means, fellas? It means you're a little pain in the butt. That's what it means, right? Aren't they annoyed at him? Don't you think that'd be annoying? Any of you have any younger siblings, or annoying siblings at least, or annoying friends at least? And Joseph, of course, is sent to check up on his brothers because it's daddy's boy. He doesn't have to work out in the field like everybody else. His brothers are off tending the flocks. And he shows up with his special coat that his daddy bought him to check up on this young little pipsqueak who's been annoying them. Comes to check up on him. They threw him into a cistern. They were going to kill him. Let's kill him and then see what becomes of his dreams. This is Joseph going through the leadership process right now, his whole life. These are trials. Doted on and then thrown and threatened with death. And then sold as a slave. Sold as a slave, and then, hey, look, most people by today's standards, if they're sold as a slave to a master and the mistress of the house is trying to get with you, you'd probably look at that as wow, my position here is going to be so secure. Notice, though, that notice the way he responds to these. This is the real marks of a leader. He had a moral challenge. Can you conceive in your mind that a high official of Pharaoh is going to have a beautiful wife? Yeah, I bet she's drop dead gorgeous. I bet Joseph thinks so too. I bet it. But for him to say no, it's because he was looking to God in this trial. And then he didn't even defend himself. She lied. He got thrown in prison. And then he's rotting in prison. Rotting in prison for over 10 years in prison. It's interesting to study the life of Joseph and see the time period of all of these events. Thought he was forgotten about. But then he was remembered at the proper time. He excelled when he was working for Potiphar as a slave. He excelled when he was working for the warden at the prison. He kept excelling everywhere. Everywhere he went. What would you have done? What would any of us have done? We know what kind of man he's going to be one day and how things are going to end up, but when you're in the thick of this kind of junk, goodness gracious. But he got remembered at the proper time, and as you know, he did become number 2 in command of Egypt, and he had a plan to save not only Egypt and all the other nations around that were going to buy from them, but also his family. He had a plan. But that plan had God's timing that it had to wait for. If he had gone to Pharaoh sooner, it wouldn't have worked. If he went to Pharaoh before the dream, it wouldn't have worked. Events that were way outside of Joseph's control, that were happening around him, that God was orchestrating around him, were shaping the events that he was going to live into with the character that he had and the leadership that he showed. But he's still a man. Because he tested his brothers. He wasn't like, oh, they're my brothers. I'm so happy to see them. Now he thought, I wonder if they're still a bunch of rascals. But they got reunited. And then when Jacob was dying, Jacob got to see Joseph again, of course. Saw that his son wasn't dead, even though the brothers lied. So it was an amazing thing for him to be there. If you recall, Jacob is sitting there and blessing his sons. This is in Genesis chapter 49. He says, I will tell you about what will happen to you in the days to come. He's prophesying to them. Amazing things that he's prophesying. Among other things, he's assigning who's going to get a double portion of the inheritance, which is always something that happens back then. Who's going to be the leader and who's going to get the double portion? Well, Judah got the leadership. Joseph got the double portion. The double portion went to his sons Ephraim and Manasseh. But after Jacob died, all the brothers were scared to death. Remember? But Joseph, they said, you're going to kill us. Dad told us before he died that you're not allowed to kill us. That's a good one. That's really, remember that. If your parents die, make sure that you, Dad said you can't kill me. But Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in God's place? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. What observations do you see in these verses?
Praise to God.
Okay, he's praising God.
Someone's evil was used for good.
Okay, the evil was used for good.
God's in control.
God was in control.
Be afraid.
There was no reason for them to be afraid.
He understood the lesson.
Joseph understood the lesson. Look at Joseph's attitude. Would your attitude be like this, or do you be like, look, fellas, the thought really did cross my mind. I'm telling you, about year 2 in that prison, I had 90 excellent plans to kill you all. But he wasn't like that. That's not what he was like. What a mature young man. What a stinker for rubbing their noses in the dreams he was having. But what a mature young man to come into Egypt and have this kind of attitude all these years later. For am I in God's place? You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, right? His brother's motivation was for evil. That was their intent. Get him out of the picture. We're sick of him. And then we'll see what comes of his dreams as they're bowing down before his feet. Don't kill us. God's motivation was for good. But these things are wrapped up in this, from our perspective, from a human perspective, these nasty trials. This time in the fire. Being forged in a fire. Like a piece of metal with all these impurities on it, subjected to intense heat and the hammer on the anvil, making it sharper and sharper and more pure.
He did have a little fun, though, didn't he?
He did.
Getting bendy in there.
He did. He had fun and he messed with them. He tested them.
Yeah.
He would have been happy if they just left Benjamin and the rest of them left. But even that wasn't part of God's plan. And then the final reconciliation, he couldn't take it anymore. He broke down crying.
Sure did.
He couldn't keep up the charade. So God is the one that brings the trials. Am I in God's place? No, he's not in God's place. God is the one that brought the trial, but the trial was brought for his good. Which means the trials in your life are brought for your good. Which means the trials in your life, some people's motivation is evil, but God's motivation is good.
It's not for our good. I mean, trials are purpose, but sometimes he uses those things for the good of others.
Oh, so that they can see you stand up under a trial?
No, but more like, although that could be true, but I'm thinking like in this case, all those people benefited.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, that's actually what he said there, right?
So God
To preserve
is
many
good.
people alive.
That's Joseph's point is he sees that God has a higher purpose than just making him happy.
That's right.
There's always a greater purpose. Same thing in trials.
And had this not happened, had this crazy,
From the very beginning.
this plan here, had that plan not happened,
So, I mean, I think that there's a certain, I don't know, maybe a comfort in knowing that when you go through a trial, though, that it's purposed. It's not
Yes.
something wasted.
That's
God's
right.
not sitting there like we're in an ant farm torturing.
yeah, he's not treating the ant farm like an Etch-a-Sketch.
Yes. Yeah. So, I always tell my son, because my son has Crohn's disease, and if you ever want to hear about it, it's quite a testimony. But that was one of the things that we learned is that trials are purposed, and part of that is to grow you into the person that God wants you to become.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, my son's career path has changed very, very much because of this disease.
Because of Crohn's. Wow.
And now he's graduating college and he already has a job. So,
Now here's the thing though, trials can appear to be evil. And we can, thank you Terry, we can complain and complain and complain. This isn't fair. Why me? You can take it that way, you really can. Look at that though, people, even those that are closest to you, may be doing things for evil purposes. It's his family. I love how God redeems it for the good. And Joseph had the right perspective in his trial, in all of his trials. It's pretty fascinating. I mean, once, if you're in Potiphar's house, you might think, well, this is great. I mean, look, this is a high official of Pharaoh. Surely he got to enjoy some good food and some nice sleeping arrangements and accommodations, good clothing, well taken care of, treated very well by his boss. It's kind of easy to stand up under that. If the wife would calm down, it'd be just an ideal place to live. But then getting thrown into prison, probably not as hard to stay as chipper. But what did he do? Do you remember what he did when he got into the prison?
As far as he was kind of like you said, a servant. And
Yeah.
He was able to interpret some dreams.
Sure, he interpreted dreams, but even before then, the warden put him in charge of the other prisoners because he saw that everything that he told Joseph to do, Joseph succeeded at.
Did you ever wonder what Potiphar's wife felt like when he was made number 2 in Egypt?
That's a good question.
Of course, that was a little while later.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, she could have been dead by then, but
she could have.
10 years later is still, what did I do to this guy?
I'd never thought about that. That'd be fascinating to dwell on that. But the point of what Joseph went through is that this is also a template for us to follow as far as an attitude when going through a trial. Because each one of these trials, it elevated him to a place of preparation and maturity that was then going to be deployed when he was number 2 in command, but also deployed while he was there. As a slave, he was working hard. As a prisoner, he was working hard. All of these things he was working hard at, but they were all small preparations to get him for the big job. And then the big reaction with his brothers. So that's the deathbed scene of Jacob. And there's Joseph and the brothers all around. Here's a good one. How do you prepare a leader to lead a people that will always doubt him, challenge him, rebel against him continually, and even want to kill him? See if there's a job opening on that one. Apply within. How are you going to prepare a leader that's going to lead this and for them to actually take it without responding in like kind? Kill me, kill you! What would you do? Like, seriously, brainstorm here.
You have to make them very patient and understanding.
Yeah. Very.
Out of a reed basket in a river?
That's a good one. Yeah. There-
As your own as a child in the kingdom of Egypt.
Well, that's it. I mean, you know where this is going, but it'd be interesting to think about what would you do, and we would have a plan, just like with Joseph. But here, God has his plan. And this is God's plan, to prepare this guy to lead this type of people. This is the type of people. Go and read Exodus through Deuteronomy.
Stiff-necked people.
Make him heir to the throne of Egypt. Watch him try to deliver his people with his own strength. Then banish him to desert obscurity, and then bring him back when he's 80. Because he'll be ready by then to lead this people. So the life of Moses. As you know, he was born under threat of death in Egypt. He was hidden. The son of Amram and Jochebed, Israelite slaves in Egypt. And all of these slaves were told to throw the male sons into the Nile and kill them. Of course, he was hidden for 3 months, but he had to go to the Nile anyway. In a basket, made of reeds, and covered in pitch, because if you just make it with reeds and you put them in the water, it's going down. So it's covered in waterproof pitch, or bitumen. This is the leader, okay? This is the backstory for Moses. He was found by Pharaoh's only heir, his daughter. Pharaoh had only his daughter as an heir. With his queen, he could not have a son. It's a fascinating story. I direct you to read Josephus' account in Antiquities of the Jews. It's awesome. So he's raised as heir to the throne of Egypt, knowing the whole time that he was an Israelite. He knew it the whole time that he was an Israelite. It was not a shock to him. He knew it. It was a big frustration for the Egyptians, who were the magicians. They wanted him dead. But that particular Pharaoh, and if the calculations are correct, that particular Pharaoh would be Thutmose I, only had one daughter. Hatshepsut was her name. And so Moses is her adopted son. And he actually got to sit on his grandfather's lap, and he threw the crown off of his head like just a silly little boy, and then he stepped on it like in a cute way that Pharaoh actually laughed at it. But his advisor said, "Hey, the child must die. Look, this is an omen for the future." And they said, "What are you talking about? He's fine." He is educated in the best schooling for 40 years of his life. This man is highly educated. Don't think of Moses as some backwoods shepherd, ain't never done nothing. You know, just because someone's got a southern accent doesn't mean they're stupid. But that's how some people think of him. That's how some people think of others with accents. Of course, we think the same thing, right? He was a self-made deliverer. He kills the Egyptian. He hides the Egyptian's body in the sand. He comes up to the Hebrews. "Hey, you that are fighting each other, you guys are brothers, right? Why are you fighting each other?" He really thinks he's somebody, honestly. He does. And he's going to be the one to deliver them. But then he had to run for his life. Because those two Hebrews knew. Oh, you're going to kill us like you killed that Egyptian? What? Egyptian? And he had to leave. He ran and he hid for 40 years in a desert. This is the path of this great leader who's got to lead those people. This is the path. This is God's plan. You know, Moses had a plan. This was his plan right here. And this was God's plan. A good plan, Moses. How about 40 years in the desert? Scrounging around with flocks, or in the arid places, seeking for places for them to eat.
Is there any significance to the fact that everything in his life happened in 40s like that? I mean, 40 years as an Egyptian, 40 years in obscurity, 40 years leading the...
Well, there we probably do have some rounding.
Oh yeah, like we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Okay.
As Stephen said, he was about 40 years old.
About that.
Yeah. So 38.
Why, other than it just maybe 3 equal parts of his life or something?
And rounding.
And rounding, making it easy.
Yeah, exactly. But God met him at the burning bush. He's been tending sheep for a long time. And he has seen bushes burn before. Newsflash. A drop of dew in the morning in the hot sun in a dry area is going to have the same impact as a magnifying glass with its focused energy on something dry is going to cause something to burn. So there's another bush that's burning. Big deal. The thing that got him is that it was on fire, but it wasn't getting burned up. It's like, that thing is still burning. 40 years of... This, can you imagine the smell? And he goes and he meets God there. And God sends him back to Egypt. And he gets to see the 10 plagues in Egypt. And he gets to see the crossing of the Red Sea. And he gets to see water from the rock and the quail and the manna. All of these things that God provides. And he's leading these people. And at Mount Horeb, he's in Mount Sinai, the Sinai mountain, Mount Horeb. He's up there for 40 days. Maybe it was 39 and a half. I don't know. 40 days. He's up there. And God is giving him the law and telling him, here's what the tabernacle is going to look like. These are the measurements of the tabernacle. This is what the ark is going to look like. This is what the table of showbread looks like. This is what the candlestick looks like. Oh, it's going to be great. Make it out of these materials. Make it this size. Amazing. Amazing. And you're going to have certain people help you. And he named them by name. Bezalel and Oholiab. 2 guys that he named by name. One was from the tribe of Judah, Bezalel, and the other one was from the tribe of Dan, Oholiab. And Moses is getting all this. He's like, oh, this is fantastic. Thank you, Lord. This is amazing. What an amazing time I've had of fellowship with God up here. And then he drops the big one on him. Oh, by the way. By the way, well, let's catch up with the action here. In Exodus 32. One of those fun moments that you have when you're on the top of the mountain and you couldn't get any happier. By the way, starting in verse 7, then the Lord spoke to Moses, go down at once, for your people, whom you brought up from the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed to it, and said, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. The Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, they are an obstinate people. Now let me alone, that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them, and I will make of you a great nation. Let me kill him. Come on, Moses. Do you see some of the things God said there? What are some of the first things he says? This is God talking to Moses.
That they're your people,
Whose people?
not his, yours, Moses.
They're Moses' people. Okay, they're Moses' people. What else?
You brought them out.
That Moses brought them out. Fascinating. But what's Moses' perspective? Now let's think about this. This is a trial. He's waited 80 years for this moment. It's all been building up to this position of leadership. You get to lead your people.
And Moses is saying in his mind, you told me to, God.
Or, I wonder if his first thought is, yeah, let's do that. Because I've been having a great time up here, and I ain't going to put up with that. Kill them all. But that's not what Moses says. Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? What does Moses do first? What did God say to him first?
Turns it around.
Yeah, turn it around, yeah. Your people who you brought in.
Why do you think God would want to say that to Moses?
Trial, test.
A test. Do you think Moses had a reason to brag? They are my people. Do you think to everybody else around that's watching saying, oh, Moses is the leader? Whose people are these? These are Moses' people. How did you get out of Egypt? How did they get out of Egypt? Moses. Do you think maybe it's a temptation for a leader to get big-headed?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Say it's about me, not about you. Moses is not that kind of guy. 40 years of schooling, and then his big failure. 40 years of meditating on it. I guarantee you he still thought about it. Until the day of that burning bush, he probably thought, well, would have been nice. I wonder how they're doing. And then all of this to prepare him for this, not just this moment, but other moments too, but this is a trial. Moses, they're your people that you brought out of Egypt. They're worshiping false gods already. Let me kill them all. I'll start over with you. I'll make you into a great nation. So he says, Lord, why should your anger burn against your people whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? He starts out by affirming that which is true. They are God's people. It is God that brought them out. It was God's power. Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land. I promise them, and that it will be their inheritance forever. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. But here we see Moses first proclaiming that which is true. It's God's people that God brought up out of Egypt. And he says something else that's true. God made promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. In fact, this is very much tied to where we were just at in Scripture. Let's go back to that day when Jacob's going to die. And he's sitting there making promises. Judah, from you shall come the rulers. The ruler's staff shall not depart from between your feet until he comes to whom it belongs, and to him will be the obedience of the nations. You know what that means? That means the Messiah is going to come from the tribe of Judah. What if they're wiped out? God, you made promises. And even closer to that, I mean, you just go back the previous chapter, chapter 31. He's talking about Bezalel and Oholiab. One from the tribe of Judah, one from the tribe. They're going to do it. They are going to be the ones to do it. Oh no, never mind. I changed my mind, Moses. I'm going to kill him. A lot of people miss the fact that this is a trial that God has given to Moses. This is not God being, oh, I'm mad, I'm going to kill him. This is a trial of his leadership. Because this is just the beginning. Moses has to put up with this kind of stuff his whole life. So I ask you, David, you see, this is what happens. I'm sorry. You wanted to do something else other than children's ministry. Well, you got it. We have a group like this for you to rule over. So we see Moses is seeking the favor of the Lord in his reply on behalf of the Israelites, and he's speaking the truth. They are God's people, and God's the one that brought them out of Egypt, and God is faithful to his promises. Moses knows this. This is why he can't agree to it. Moses himself knows God's word. Not only knows it, but he's analyzed it and understood it. He's interpreted it correctly. What about the promises you made? I wonder if Moses was even thinking about it out loud. Could that possibly happen? What are the implications if I say yes, Lord, what are the implications? Is it that you've gone against your word? He's not going to go against his word. And Moses better get used to that. That means these people aren't going away.
It's kind of like Abraham and Isaac, too. When God told him to sacrifice Isaac.
That's it. Yeah, God's not going to go. Look at Hebrews 11. God is not going to go against his word that he promised to Abraham. Abraham knew that if he were to even kill Isaac, that God would resurrect him and give him back to him from the dead. So Abraham wasn't worried. But Abraham's trend line was pretty shaky before that. God's always faithful to his promises. God's leaders need to remember God's promises. This grounded Moses so that Moses could give the right answer. I mean, we can guess and say, well, what would have happened if Moses had said, all right, God, go kill him?
Means you couldn't believe anything God says.
What would God's reply have been?
He probably would have reminded him of the promises.
Maybe. I would think so, but maybe even more so, that wouldn't have been the person that God chose if he had to give that kind of answer. God knew who he had chosen. He had been, Terry, tell us, as you approach 80, are you able to analyze things in a much more mature fashion and be more even-headed about things? Are you ready to take over a role like this?
Show me a burning bush.
There you go. He needs the burning bush. I don't blame you. So God tests his leaders to see if they have a heart and mind that's attuned to his. And in Moses' case, he did. But we're going to find out more about God here in a moment. He tests his leaders so that they know they are ready for the task ahead. I can imagine Moses being pleased with his reaction. I can imagine what my reaction might have been. Are you kidding me? What's the point of all this stuff we've been doing up here? I can't believe these people. You want to kill them? I need a minute, because my answer is yes, but hold on to that. I would not have been the one for the job. So if you're going to say yes today, wait till tomorrow when they're all ready to stone you and they're constantly saying, take us back to Egypt. Or when, remember that promised land you're supposed to go to? Guess what? They're not going to go. Are you ready for that now? Oh, I didn't know all that. Go ahead and kill him. He had to be ready because there's nothing but tough times ahead. He's not going to see any significant victories until they wind up entering the land, the promised land, from the other side of the Jordan, the eastern side, when they actually have victories about 30 some odd years later, 37, 38 years later, rounded to 40, Shelley. He's got a long road ahead of him. Moses reminds God of his promises to his people, which is also an aid to Moses to remember what God promised. God doesn't need to be reminded of his promises. God knows what he promised. It is good for Moses to remember and to tell God, but God, what about what you promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Oh boy, all those implications. It can't be that. It can't be that you're going to kill them. But it can be that God is making his man. He's making his leader here.
Okay, so he relented, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the same thing as changing his mind?
You could say repented or relented. This is also from a human perspective. But he relented what he threatened that he would do. It's a threat. Let me kill them all and make you into. I mean, the whole thing, actually, let's couch this. The interpretation, here's a hermeneutical problem for you. Because, God changed his mind? God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind. Does he speak and not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? No, that is not true that I'm really going to kill him. Oh, wait, no, never mind. I'm not going to kill him. Because if that's what your salvation holds on, the God who says, I'm going to say with Jesus, no, you know what, never mind. Sorry, I changed my mind.
Well, the test, it would have just been, why don't I just go ahead and kill him and just make you my promised one? Just, as a test, kind of just going, I'll just kill them all and you're the promised one. To just test Moses to see if he was like, that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
So it may not have, to me when I look at it, it's not God was saying, I'm just going to go ahead and kill them all and we'll sort it out later. He was throwing it out there of, I would just kill them all and make you the new leader. What do you think?
Yeah, the new source of the nation. Yeah.
So.
Well, Moses loses his temper when he comes down. It's all one thing. Oh, no, Lord, be forgiving of them and don't kill them, please, please. He comes down, what's the first thing he does? Bam! Smashes the tablets. God comes back to him later, and he says, Moses, I need you to carve out two new stone tablets like the ones that you broke, and come back up, and I will replace the ones that you broke. He mentions it to him like twice. Because God didn't command him to break those. It'd be like taking your Bible and somebody that you're training has done something foolish and you throw your Bible in the fire. Because you're so mad at them. Not a good move. But Moses is kind of dumbfounded about God. And here we see a few chapters later, in chapter 34, Moses is saying, I want to know who you really are. Who are you, God? I want to understand you more. And here in verse 6, God is going to reveal himself to Moses who he is. And he passed in front of Moses proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Well, that's saying a lot about God's character. If you look at it in this context, you can see even more clearly that it's a trial for Moses. And this isn't the first time that God's going to do this to Moses. He's going to do it again. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation, which opens up a whole new can of worms. What on earth does that mean? It means basically when people are doing sinful things, really sinful things, they usually pass it on to their kids, and it usually has a lasting impact. Which we kind of saw in Judges chapter 2. Because they were quick to return to wickedness, man. Generation after generation. So Moses spent, just think about Moses as a template of a leader. A leader whose plans, that leader's plans, are coming into collision with God's plans. He spent 40 years thinking he was somebody, then 40 years thinking he was nobody. He spent 80 years in the forge of God. And it wasn't until then that he was actually ready. Which the patience of God usually does not intersect well with the patience of the believer. Isn't that right? Our timing and God's timing are not the same thing. But what should you do? You should relent your timing and your plan to God. When things happen, it's for a reason. It's not for nothing. All of these little annoyances and things that have really dragged you down are for a purpose. It doesn't feel nice, but the end result is an awesome thing. To be on the anvil of God, he wouldn't waste his time on that anvil. I mean, we just saw what his character is like. The I am, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. That's who you're dealing with. That's who's shaping you. Now, for David's pleasure, we come to James chapter 1, where it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Terry, I'll ask you, I'll pick on you because you're the oldest and wisest here.
Thank you, I appreciate the form.
Do you consider your trials with joy?
I do so more now than I used to.
There is hope. Who else considers their trials with joy? Mark, Ryan, anybody else? Shelley sometimes? Anybody else that's enrolled in the class right now? Or not?
It doesn't say you have to be happy about them.
You know, it is written as an imperative. It is a command. Consider it pure joy, David. It's tough. Okay, it's tough. When we have trials that come into our life, it's hard for us to look at them with joy. But if you get the eternal perspective, not just the eternal perspective on other people, but the eternal perspective on what God is doing in your life, because you're also other people. The trials are not for nothing. They are there for a reason. And there are many kinds of trials. So you're going to come against many different types. These trials test your faith. These trials give you perseverance, and the perseverance makes you mature. And in a leadership role, you have to have been through trials for that maturity. There was a reason you had cancer. There was. It was not for nothing. If anything, it certainly screwed up your timing, didn't it? Continues to do so for a purpose. There's a perseverance completes what's lacking in you. Did you see that's what the verse said? so that you may be mature and complete. Perseverance must finish its work, because you're not mature and complete. There is something lacking in you. So these trials form you in the forge, into the fire, onto the anvil, now with the hammer. Goodbye with the dross. It's being hammered away. And that thick skull of yours is being mashed down into a sharp sword. It's a weird mental picture, but... And trials strengthen your faith when you have the eternal perspective and you see why. What happens if you don't see why you're going through a trial?
Then it seems like vanity.
It seems like what?
It seems like vanity. It was just vain.
Yeah, it was a vain thing to have gone through. Or what if, let me put it a different way, what if you're going through that same trial again and you're just not getting it?
When you don't understand God's plan, when you can't trace His hand, that's just hard.
Oh boy. Oh man, the 1980s are calling.
Yeah. Well, when you're old.
Oh golly, but I knew that reference. Was that Greg X. Volts or something? Or one of those guys? If you're going through the same trial over and over again, chances are you didn't learn the lesson. Good spiritual leaders learn from their mistakes. Here's some 3 great proverbs for you. The mind of a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. The mind of a man or woman plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Many plans are in a man's heart, but the counsel of the Lord will stand. Man's steps are ordained by the Lord. How then can man understand his way? Does this give you hope? You know where you're headed?
It gives you hope if you trust the Lord.
That's it, if you trust the Lord.
Trust Him, then lead on.
Amen. If you trust Him, then let Him lead on. And follow. I mean, what a wacky solution to the problem of how do you provide for people that are going to die in 20 years from a famine? Nobody in this planet is going to come up with that plan unless they're looking at the life of Joseph and saying, well, we need to find someone to sell into slavery. Yeah, pick that person while they're a kid. A bratty little teenager. We need to find a bratty little teenager that has just a mountain of potential. A bratty little male teenager who will just say no to sex with the boss's wife. Okay, let's think about it that way. But thinking in these terms of these proverbs and the truths that they're communicating, we make plans for our path. We do. Don't you? What's your 5-year plan? And it's okay to plan to go to Thailand. There's nothing in the world wrong with that. What's your plan? Right?
Lord willing.
Yeah, Lord willing. Hey, maybe that's where some of that Lord willing comes from in James chapter 5. The Lord directs our steps, which means we're on His path. It's not our path. It's the path that He has for us. And as leaders, you need to align yourself with this thinking and this perspective, because when the whole thing jackknifes and you're headed in a completely different direction, when Dylan walks away from the ministry here to go to ministry up there, not that he walked away from the ministry, that is a, okay, God, what are you doing? That wasn't my plan. It wasn't Dylan's plan. But we got to go with it because God is doing it. And who am I to go against what God is doing? You were supposed to be in Thailand already. No, you weren't supposed to. Your plan was. So we don't even really know where we're going.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
We don't know where we're going. But we do trust the person who's leading.
So does that mean any road we take's okay? We don't know where we're
No, you plan. You plan. And then God says, Okay, I understand. Now let me move this. All right, there you go. Because he's the one also that can do that course correction. This is the way I have you going, but actually I do want you to go that way first because you need to get equipped over here so that you're mature and complete, not lacking anything. Now you got it. But you're not ready for this.
I think, but I understand what you were saying. It's like when you make your plan, you have to make your plan, number one, according to His will, which we have to know His will. And you also have to make your plan understanding that you don't know everything, so just expect that there's going to be some change.
Expect it.
Expect it.
Hallelujah.
Unless you
Yeah.
unless you know that you're God and your plan is perfect. Otherwise, I think He's going to perfect it for you. So I know He's done it for me.
Yeah, I would not use this as I would not use these verses as an excuse to say, I don't need a plan.
Don't plan, but plan according to the way that God is telling you to plan.
Yeah, be hip to what God is doing.
There's a non-Christian song. Everybody probably knows this one. Even Terry knows this one. But Kansas, hold on loosely. You just hold on to your plan and leave enough room in there for God to.
Is that what those lyrics are?
That's not what that's about at all, sir.
I don't know this song.
Hold on loosely. But
It's
don't let
Hold
go.
On Blue Suede.
No blue suede shoes.
It's Hold On Loosely. No, but that's it. Hold your hand open and let God place things in and out of it.
Right.
Or put your hand out there for Him to pull.
This plan.
And when you're doing this,
is fragile.
or when you felt God pulling you in this direction, and then He's pulling you in this direction, and He's like, and you keep grabbing over here, but I want to go this way. It's like when your kid wants to go look at something over there. But I have learned, if you train a child to not do that, they will stay by your side. So let us also be trained like children not to do that. So we should submit to where God is leading, which will be good for you to do, and then for you also to show to others that you are leading, and even those that you are not, because God's the one who knows where you're going. We think we're at the wheel. And sometimes when we are at the wheel, we're trying to get into a car accident, and He's saying no. Other times we're sitting in the back seat, in the baby seat. Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. In all things, whether we perceive them as good or bad. This is the heart of what Joseph said. What you meant for evil, God intended for good. God's the one that's working here. These are just observations. God is, not only is God working, God is working for the good. And you were called, of those who were called, according to His purpose. So you have a calling that's according to His purpose. But the beautiful thing is it should line up with your spiritual gifting and your preference. Where your heart is. And so long as it's in the Bible, you can do that ministry. If it's some wacky thing that God never intended, like helping people who identify as women to get sex change operations, that's not in the Bible. As a church, we're not supposed to be involved in that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
But if you want to help widows take care of their lawn, and on a weekly basis, all the widows, or you're going to provide money for them so that they can eat, or you're going to help people get housing for orphans, or if you want to do whatever, you come up with something that God has put on your heart. Go do that thing. So you were not called according to your purpose. That's why we've always got to be in the Word. Go ahead, Erica, say it.
It's all good.
Boom. So trials and your plans. God's trials and your plans are on a collision course. Let God's plans win. Let Him make the changes. It's okay. You'll be heading in the right direction. Don't stop making plans. You have to make plans. You love the Lord with your mind too, because sometimes He's got you in the place. I mean, what's Joseph supposed to do? He got the job. Okay, Joseph, what do we do now? I don't know. I don't want to plan because I just want to wait to see what God does. Well, God already said there's a famine coming in 7 years, so come on, what are we going to do? Let's wait on God. No, keep making plans, man. It's okay if you don't. Not the concept of I didn't make any plans, I don't know my way, but just understand God will make changes. Those changes are going to be for your good and for your maturity so that you grow as a leader. And then your reaction, this is a big one, right? Your reaction may determine your reality, but it will not determine what God's reality is. So when these trials happen to you, you can say, woe is me. Why me? I didn't deserve this. Have that gripe session with God. Go ahead. Do it. Like really. Tell Him. And then ask Him to remind you and help you to sober up. Because He has a bigger reality. But do you understand what I'm saying? There's all these variables in your life. You have no idea the cascading effect of you not being in Thailand yet. What kind of an impact that has had, because all of these other things had to reach a certain point. And that's for all of us, right? So get with God's reality, because you are being forged into something better. And if you're going to be a leader of other people, you're going to go through trials. Trials are coming. How are you going to react? They're watching you, how you react. Not only that, but the trial is there to make you better. And I'm not there yet. I'm sorry. Terry, I'm not there yet where I consider it pure joy every time. I have to keep going back to James chapter 1 and thinking about that. I think this is good here. This is good also, but go back to these verses when you're going through a trial. Think about Moses and think about Joseph when you're going through a trial. And then make that course correction while you're in that trial. I'm in a trial right now, okay? I've been in this one trial where I'm trying to get rid of these 2 houses that me and my business partner bought. And God keeps saying, Lord, I just want to sell them. You know what? I just want out. I don't care how much money I lose. I just want nothing to do with them anymore. And God keeps saying, no, you're keeping them. It's like, but it's really messing me up, Lord. Nope. Okay. I need a reminder. Jeremy, do you not think I know what I'm doing? Oh, yeah. I forgot. How can I forget? How can we forget? God knows what He's doing. Yeah, I already said that. Get better at it and teach it to others.